Hello, I'm Fernando.
I'm Matt.
We're the guys from Iron Age Audioworks. And here we have a SoundWorkshop 1280B console that we are going to take out of its box and basically go through a basic inspection to see what these guys look like.
Alright, so this is a 1280B. This was actually designed by a bunch of ex-API engineers after API went bankrupt. They started up SoundWorkshop and went with the latest and greatest technology at the time, which was integrated circuit op amps. This is a really kind of strange little console because it's made specifically to work with a Tascam 8-track tape machine. So instead of having like a typical console layout, you have 4 pairs of stereo buses, 4 stereo buses going out to these 8 track outs, and then for track returns you come back and do mix down to 7/8 again. It's really kind of strange, but it worked really well for what it was. This is really one of the first forays into the home recording industry. Alright, so this is a pretty typical little consolette. You've got a mic pre or line input that you select here. You add the amount of trim or gain. You've got a 3-band sweepable EQ on these 8 channels. Then over here you have 3-band fixed frequency EQs. This is actually called the Super EQ. Not all of them came with that. And then here's your matrix for your bus assignments, mute, pan. You have a single echo send on each channel, and then of course your solo and fader. Up here at the top you have your 8 output tracks, so there's another master output level for each track. This bus or tape basically tells you whether you're feeding from the bus inputs here or from the tape returns. And then you've got a Q send, a pan into the monitor section, and then a level to the monitor. Over here we have our echo and Q. So you have echo send master, a Q send master, and then you can return the echo to Q for monitoring like an echo on a vocal. So you have left and right echo return to Q. Over here sets the solo level. This is your talkback mic, so you can talk back to Q only or slate to everything. You have a single stereo echo return with separate left and right levels that also has its own assignment matrix, power switch. And then this is your master section, so you can pick your monitor out, whether you're monitoring your 8 tracks out, monitoring your Q, monitoring your 2-track mixdown, which is actually tracks 7 and 8, or monitoring 2-track playback, which is coming back from your tape returns, and then finally this is your master output fader. So this is like the output fader on your 2 bus on a normal console. This is actually in really good shape. We've taken apart a couple of these things, and this one is probably in the best shape of any one that we've seen. All right. So on the back, you have some of that weirdness for the Tascam recorder. Instead of having typical XLR or another interface, almost everything back here is RCA. So each channel has a direct out, which is at the end of the channel signal chain. You have a track out, and this is for each of the 8 individual tracks. So this would go to each track of your tape machine. You have a pre-fader patch point, and then you have a line in or a tape return. Each channel also has a mic preamp, so an XLR input here. And then again, getting into some of the specifics of the track, tracks 9, 10, 11, and 12 can either be used as typical line inputs for a mixdown, but they're also dedicated to echo, Q, and then your 2-track left and rights. So there's switching jacks back here. If you don't have anything plugged into them, they default to these echo and Q assignments. And then over here in your master section, you have your echo return RCA inputs, your 2-track playback inputs, your control room outputs, your talkback mic in, and then the talkback, there's a separate line out for the mic signal. This little guy right here is a barrel jack for DC supply for phantom power. The board doesn't actually come with phantom power internally. And then there's a little DB25 expander port if you wanted to like move these side by side. I've never actually seen an OEM one that had that feature already installed, but I assume there's a way to do it. And then lastly, you see this right here, this little guy did not have a grounding pin, so this is built-in non-IEC connector, and they did not come with a fuse, so that's something we usually like to add for safety's sake. The jumper just going to this random spot on the card. It's like they forgot a wire. Look, somebody broke a wire right there. You see the brown wire? It's not connected, and so they just soldered it to the bottom of the card. Yeah, that's weird.
And this one has Scotch tape on the switch as well.
It must be a factory feature, right? Okay, so just want to start talking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so this is once you get the case open, this is what you got inside. Here we have two long Molex rails. These carry your buses and your voltage rails and things like that to each channel card. Each card, you got 12 identical channel cards. Some of them don't have all the same things. Like you see here, these are the resistors to trim the LED light levels. There's no LEDs here, so those are missing. The ones that don't have summing buses on them have a little bit different population, but it's all the same PCB. You see each one has two Harris 4741 quad integrated circuit op amps here and here, and then a couple of single and double op amps to run the LED metering. And then all of them have these biodynamic little input transformers. They're cool little input transformers. The 1280Bs had the input transformers. The 1280As did not. And then this is the control room card, so this has your switching. There's a large integrated circuit mounted switch to handle all the monitor section switching, the solo logic and all that. And a couple of headers that come from your two power cards, positive and minus voltage rails here. And then there's, each one of these is a little booster amplifier for your monitor outputs. And then there's also some AC distribution that comes on this little card right here.
All right.
Take this apart then.
Yeah.
Take the rails off.
It's the back end where all the RCA connectors are coming in. One of the nice things you could do to one of these is replace all the RCAs with TRS jacks, with the exception of everything that's behind this little board. You wouldn't be able to fit a modern TRS jack plug there. And the wire routing, it's pretty nice and neat. Everything's color coded. Like Matt said already, two individual transformers for positive and negative. What is this running? What voltage is this one running?
It's 15.
15.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then you can see, if you look over here, you can see that each one of these channels, the Super EQ is actually a factory option that they added on afterwards. On the upper part of the case, the EQ point and the silk screening is actually just a plastic sheet that they would glue on after. So the Super EQ fixed, or the frequency points are all set by these little caps here. And it's a whole separate sub-assembly that they just mounted onto the board. It really almost seems like an afterthought, like they decided to add this later. But it's a really cool sounding EQ. It's really sweet on snare and kick. There's actually a 20 hertz center frequency boost point on the low end, which is monster. It sounds really, really good on bass and snare, kick drum.
Yep. Once again, this one looks pretty clean. We've seen some of these where liquids might have been spilled on them, and you see some of these linear faders here. I think this is some sort of paper with epoxy where it rots, or it's just full of gunk. And
Actually, I've seen a little bit of partying.
Yeah, there's a little bit of liquid there, but for the most part, it looks pretty good.
You see this one channel here's got something funky going on with the wiring harness. for some reason, instead of routing the wiring harness down below like on all the other channels, this one's pulled up here. And then it looks like this broke, and instead of fixing it, someone just soldered it to the bottom of the Molex pin underneath.
All right.
Probably 40 years old, so it's seen some action.
So this is the first video on this 1280 that we're going to pretty much just pull a board out and maybe explain what each part of the board does and some of the basic overhauls that we would do. You know, one would be changing out the electrolytic capacitors, maybe upgrading the power supply, even including a phantom power supply if you don't want to bring phantom power from the outside, and adding that fuse and a grounding connection to make this thing a little safer. But for the most part, this one's in pretty good shape. We might just pull out some boards just to kind of show you how to do it and what you do. But thanks for watching.